Welcome back for another video. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. We just finished up this doll, the Blythe that we made with closed eyes using some epoxy sculpt. So today I want to start working on a smaller doll. This will be a OB11 size doll, and this is the head, and this will be the body when we get to it. But I did have to cut off the top of the head because it doesn't open, and I had to cut off the backs of the eyes because we want to put some wooden blocks in there, and balls, and I'm going to just glue these in because I don't want to mess with putting aluminum foil over them. We'll just glue them in and then they can stay, and I think it'll be easier to do the clay when we don't have to worry about them popping out. So should have had this ready. Sorry. So we're going to use some E6000. Let me back the camera up a little bit. And I'm just going to put the glue kind of around the edge so that when I put the ball in, it'll catch on some of it and hold it in place, hopefully. And we're going to use our hemostats to place them. These balls are not the exact shape of the eyes, but I think they're close enough. And once they're glued in with the help of epoxy, we'll be able to mold them. So I'm just pressing them from the back, and then I'm going to try to clean off some of that excess glue because it's oozing out. Just holding on to the back of it to make sure it doesn't pull out as I'm pressing on the eye with the Q-tip. Same thing over here. Just cleaning up my mess. Okay, so we've got, oh, when I pull my finger away, they want to come out. The ball wants to come out with my finger. So, all right, so we're going to leave this to get completely dry, and then we'll start adding some epoxy, and probably also have to cut off some of the lips if we're going to make it look similar to the other doll that had the lips pulled in. All right, see you soon. Okay, we're back after we've let the glue dry, and now we're going to carve off the lips so we can create that look where they're sort of, the lips are pulled in, and we'll do that with epoxy as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do everything at one time with the epoxy since this is such a small area to work with. I don't have to split it up like I did with the bigger doll where I did the eyes first actually, and then, you know, the mouth. This is going to be a much smaller canvas to work with, so hopefully we can get it all done in one time, and we can let it dry, and then we can try to paint it. You know, I also thought that I could probably have just painted over the wood of those eyes, but since we're going to do the epoxy of the mouth, we might as well do the eyes anyway. I think it'll be a lot better. So we're going to use our trusty epoxy sculpt, and as you know, you get 2 equal parts. Smush them together, and with the magic of editing, we make it go really fast so you don't have to wait for a couple of minutes, but about 2 minutes is what they suggest. You get your lump there that's nicely mixed so that you know it will harden properly, and cleaning off my tools that I always forget to clean when I use them. So we'll just pinch off a little bit of this and start working on putting this into the mouth and the eyes. All right, and always, it's always, using less than I thought. So actually the piece, I'm going to cut this in half to use on the eyes. And that'll be nice because the back part will already be flat and I can just press it onto the eye. And then just start smoothing it out around the edges so that it's nice and smooth and connected to the plastic around it properly. And then it will look more natural. So there we go with our two eyelids, I guess I should say. And I'm going to start smoothing those out with my tool, and also, I always put a little water on it so it doesn't stick to the epoxy, making sure that the edges are pressed in so it looks natural. And you use a process of tools and fingers and brushes, whatever you need to get it to the desired shape. But in general, I like to run over it with my finger at the end just because I think that smooths it the best and sort of creates smoothness overall. Because doing it like this, you're going to leave some, lumpy places and some places that are more dug in. The brush is good for this also, to some degree. Especially around the edges, it really helps to smooth those out into the surrounding plastic. That way it'll look more seamless when we actually do the painting. So just find you a nice small brush like this. These are the ones that I bought that come in a kit for nails, basically. And they work really great for these small projects. And probably about ready to get a whole nother set because I've used these a lot, and sometimes product gets built up on them and I can't get it out. And then I'll just have to get a whole new set. But they're pretty inexpensive, so not too bad. And you get, I think, about 8 or 10 different brushes. They're all very useful sizes. I like these little flat ones because they have enough stiffness to them to help press down on the epoxy, but also enough smoothness that you can smooth out the surface if you use a lighter hand. You do want to make sure you clean up these edges. They should be smoothed down and no residue where you don't want epoxy, because otherwise they're going to show up under the paint. So sometimes you can get a little bit smoothed out and then it is sort of detached from the area that you're smoothing, but it's hard to see because you've smoothed it out so much. And then you don't see it again until you paint it, and it's a real pain in the butt to have to take the paint off. Ask me, because I know, because I have to do that all the time. After I paint something, it is really much more apparent. Unfortunately, because this epoxy has sort of a marbled look to it when it dries. It's not a real flat, color that you can easily see the differences. So when it has that marbling, the areas that are light look like they're raised. And they're, not necessarily. And then also there's areas that are raised that you don't really notice because of the marbling look of the epoxy. Even after it dries, it's just difficult. I wish they made one that was white. That would be really good. That would be excellent, actually. All right, so we're going to use a piece now and jam it into the mouth. You're going to have to kind of put your finger behind this as you work so it doesn't press through. I do want to have some pressed through just so I know that the mouth will be secure where we put it and not pop off, especially if we try to paint it. And as we manipulate the head, trying to put wigs on and things like that. Probably next time I do this, I would go ahead and attach the body and the head just so I don't have to mess with that after, I get, well, I wouldn't, attach the head, not the hair. I'm going to use a wig on this doll, so I just need to attach the head. Just because when you're pushing the body in and stuff like that, or attaching the head, you can squish the head and it might cause the epoxy to pop out or something. So just lessons learned from my process with this particular type of doll. Just trying to get it really smooth, trying to make my lip crease there and have it not look like Homer Simpson. Yeah, you want it to look like the lips are indented inward at the crease. So you just have to keep working on it. It's a process, especially for these little small tiny areas. There I'm really pressing in the sides to make sure I have a nice clean crease on either side between the cheek and the lip area, because it's going to look like her lips are a little bit pursed. Now her lips are naturally sort of roundy and pooch, so I'm not going to have to add anything to the cheeks like I did on the Blythe, which has a little bit flatter face. So we just got to worry about getting the mouth and the eyes looking good for this particular doll. And I'm really pressing down on the bottom of that area to make sure it blends in with the chin properly, and that there aren't any rough edges in the seams or also between the mouth and the nose. Those are all areas that we want to be seamless and look like they merge perfectly together. And just, you're going to have to use your tools and see how they work and use the proper ones, especially on this where you're trying not to press it in too much. It's really important to keep your finger behind it, which at one point I didn't, and I kind of pressed him out all the way in the hole. I had to push it back out from the bottom, from the back side. So the rest of the time I did try to work with it with my finger pressed against the back, so I had a firm surface to work on. I mean, I guess you could just put some epoxy in the hole at the back and then put more epoxy on top of it after it dried to have a firmer surface. But didn't do that. Lesson learned. Always learning lessons here on my channel. Alright, so I think we're getting to a point where it's looking pretty good. Just a few final touches, and we'll be letting this dry overnight so we can start the painting process, which is my favorite part. This isn't my favorite part because it's small, it's hard to work on. I'm trying to use two different mediums together and get the epoxy to merge into the plastic appropriately. Not easy, really not easy, but if you're persistent and patient, should be able to do it. Should be able to. I hopefully too didn't want to have to put epoxy over the whole face of this doll, because smoothing that out is just a whole nother issue. So I'm really hoping that we can just do the lips and the eyelids and then paint over all that to get it to look natural and seamless, so it looks like a doll that is, made in one piece and not pieced together as we are doing. It's not always, that's the painting doesn't always look as good as the bare plastic skin, because it's never as smooth, but it's the only way to get these one-of-a-kind creative things done to these dolls. So yeah, work with what you got, right? Yep. Just continuing my process of smoothing. Looks like that crease in the lip is going to be the hardest part, but we will persevere to endure and try to be patient, making sure that every place where the epoxy is, that we've smoothed that into the plastic as best we can. I think a paintbrush is probably the easiest way to do those small areas like the creases. The overall eyelid, a little bit easier with the finger. You want to always look at your piece from the side, the bottom, every angle, because that always helps you to see imperfections or inconsistencies or in the symmetry. And if you have it, especially the lips, because I want the bottom lip to pull in lower than the top lip. So you definitely want to look at it from the side. You want to look at it from the bottom, looking up. Make sure the eyelids are sticking out the same amount and rounded. And I think we're almost to the point where we can let her dry. Looking pretty good. So we'll let her dry overnight and we'll be able to come back and do some painting. Hello everyone. It's the next morning and the epoxy has dried. We've sanded the epoxy down to a smooth surface, hopefully, and applied some Liquitex matte medium, a couple of coats to protect the surface of the doll's face and also to give us a nice canvas that's a little bit tacky and holds the paint as well. So I've mixed up some semi pale paint to paint the eyelids. So my goal here is to just paint the eyelids, not and the just to paint the epoxy part. I don't want to paint everything. So how am I going to do that? I think it's going to be a matter of finding the right brush. So I'm going to start with this brush. It's very soft. My goal is to not create a lot of brush strokes because I don't want to have to spray paint this or use an airbrush. So I'm just going to try to keep the paint on the epoxy areas and to use thin coats. I've thinned the paint. This is just acrylic paint. I've thinned it with water so that hopefully it'll somewhat self-level. And we're going to have to put obviously more than one coat, but if I can just contain it to the area of the eyes and the lips, maybe it won't be that obvious. Am I hopeful? I'm hopeful. Yeah, we'll see. May still have to spray paint the whole thing, but we'll see. Hopefully too, I've sanded the edges down to where they don't show that much. And even if I do have to end up painting it with the airbrush, it will be good to have some coats on this darker color. And I'd say the chances are good I will have to airbrush it. Yeah, oh well. It's just no way to get that smooth coat that you want. And also make it match the skin. So I'm already getting it all over the skin, so yeah, I'm probably gonna have to spray paint it. Oh well. But that's okay. That's okay. It's always an experience, and this way I will get some coats of this down so that I don't have to spray paint more than a couple of coats. This is different than Blythe. This doll has soft plastic face. It doesn't have a hard plastic face, so it's a little different in terms of, you know, the way it takes the paint and the way the spray painting will work. But I'm hoping with the addition of the Liquitex matte medium that it will be easier and more seamless. So that it doesn't look like, you know, we have something added, i.e. the closed eyes and the lips. Okay, we're going to have to let this dry, and then we'll come back and do the airbrush. All right, our skin is sufficiently dry now, and we're ready to start doing some color, which is my favorite part. So I'm starting with some blush on the cheeks, and as usual, I do wipe off a lot of the color of these chalk pastels before I start putting it on the skin. I just like to build it up, and usually you can wipe a whole lot off and you still have a whole lot left. So that was true here as well. But the colors of each pastel is a little different too. So you have to just, wipe it off on the paper towel, see where you are. You can always build it up. So I'm blushing a little bit around the edges of the face because I want it to have a little bit more dimension. And we'll continue just to put some colors down. Using a little bit of a brown here to put on the crease between the eyelid and the cheek to give that some shadow and dimension. Can also use my watercolor pencil in a minute for that, but these pastels are great for some soft shadows, and anywhere you have an indentation, like above the eyes or where they meet the cheeks, where the eyelids meet the cheeks, is a good place for some shadow. Also usually use some around the nose, in the creases between the cheek. And then now I'm putting down a little bit of color for the eyebrows. I like to do this with pastel initially and then fill in with strokes of watercolor pencil to make it look like individual hairs. I like a natural looking eyebrow. So these are to make her look relaxed and sleeping. So I've put the eyebrow tilted up at the nose, and then now I'm putting a little bit of red in that crease where the lips are pulled in. Don't want that to extend too far out because the lips are pulled in. Now I'm using some dark brown at the bottom of the eyelid where it meets the cheek to define that. I am going to put some eyelashes on her, but I also want to have that additional shading. And now I'm just using my really sharpened watercolor pencil to put some eyebrow strokes on top of that chalk pastel to give it a more realistic look. And I usually use more than one color. I'll use a lighter color and a darker color because I like to have a little bit of difference. Most people do have different color eyebrows. Like now I'm starting to have some white in my eyebrows, which nobody likes. So yeah, different colors give it a little dimension, and hopeful to make it look a little bit more realistic. But I think she's looking pretty cool. I like, this part where I can make it come to life. You can also use your Q-tips to help smudge the chalk pastels that make them look a little bit smoother, and just darkening up that crease a little bit more. I think she's looking pretty cute with her little closed eyes and her pursed lips. Not pursed, but it pulled in, sucked in, like she's sleeping and having a nice dream. I'm just darkening up the center of the cheeks a little bit, and also adding additional color around the face, putting a little brown into the deep part of the ear for shadows, using chalk pastel for that, and us in the creases of the mouth and around the nose. If you make a mistake here, you can always use your eraser, or you might put some water on a Q-tip. Most of this will come off because I did coat it with Mr. Super Clear prior to putting any color on the paint. So now it's time to put on some teeny tiny lashes. So cute. So I'm just using the adhesive that was on the lashes, to attach them to the container initially, and then I'll put some glue on them to hold them down after I get them where I want them. And I'm just using, typical fake eyelashes, human fake eyelashes, and cutting them down dramatically for this small doll. Those were some I had left over from the Blythe, actually, because I didn't use the whole eyelash. So I'm just trying to make sure I get them symmetrical, get them the same length, and hopefully the same distance apart, that sort of thing. I think it adds some realism that I really like. I'm trying to use my tweezers here because it was just hard to get a hold of these little tiny eyelashes with your fingers sometimes and stick them to the face. And then I'm using my pointy tool to press them down. And I'm trying to cut them at, you know, sometimes you just have to pull them off. And that's why it's good to not permanently glue them down initially, so you can still pull them off. So, looking good so far. Now we'll just take some Elmer's glue and dab it along the top of the lash where it connects with the eyelid, and that'll make it a permanent or semi-permanent attachment that won't fall off. Elmer's is good for this because it dries really clear usually, and usually has no problems with different surfaces. It's usually pretty good for dolls in some situations where you don't mind that it dries a little slower than, say, E6000 or glue gun. But anyway, there we are. There's our little head. So now we're going to put the clothes on and see how she looks overall. I had this cute little outfit that I've had for a while, and I think I got it on AliExpress. I think. Not sure, but I think. And if not, it may have been Rabbit in the Moon, which is an Etsy shop. I also have a little wig that I bought on AliExpress for her. I like it because it looks like a little kid with its little cute pigtails. And this is nice because you can change the look of the doll if you wanted to by changing the wig. So there she is. She's looking, I think, really cute. You know, the only thing about painting it is it just doesn't have as smooth a surface as it would if it was the plastic and you just paint it on top of it, but no way to get those closed eyelids unless you can find a head that has the closed eyelids. And I love this little outfit, especially, guys, these little shoes. Oh my Lord, they are so cute. Little real leather shoes with little bunny heads on them. So she's ready to go. Hope you enjoyed this and learned some things, and I'll see you on my next video. Thanks, and bye.